So how do you know if someone's violating your boundaries? That's this week's topic, because when someone violates your boundaries, the tendency might be to question yourself and doubt your own perceptions rather than recognize that someone is indeed crossing your boundaries. So in this video, I'm going to give you examples of boundary violations so you know for sure when they're being crossed and what you can do to protect yourself. But first, my name's Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist. I love helping people create relationships that work. So what is a boundary violation? It's basically when someone disregards your needs for their own benefit. So the boundary violator is much more interested in pleasing themselves and getting what they need versus you being comfortable and feeling safe. And that's why addressing boundaries is super important in our relationships, because they make us feel safe. And so for you, I want you to be able to recognize when your boundaries are being violated so you can protect yourself. So let's talk about physical boundary violations. There are two. One is any unwanted physical or sexual touch. And the second one is when someone invades your personal space. Let's talk about the first one. So you have a right to determine how and when people touch you, even if it's with your husband, your wife, your partner, your mother. Sometimes when we're really close to people, we may feel obligated to let them touch us, but depending on your history and your own wants and your own preferences, you know, some people just aren't touchy-feely people, and that's okay. Or if you have had a history of trauma and abuse around touch, you may need really strong boundaries around that, and that's okay. Part of what makes boundaries so complicated is that they vary from person to person. So what I might consider a boundary, you might not, and vice versa. And that's okay, because boundaries should tailor what's important to you. So the next one is when someone invades your personal space. This is when you might be at a party and someone's standing too close to you. Or maybe you're in an argument and your partner is preventing you from leaving. Okay, that's a major boundary violation, because you should be able to leave a room if you want to, especially if it's an argument, because sometimes there's a safety issue. So invading someone's personal space is a major boundary that I really want you to pay attention to. Even when you're talking to someone, you may need more physical distance in order to feel safe than your wife, your mother, your brother, your child, and that's okay. You get to determine how much physical space you need. And that's super important when it comes to boundaries, because that's how you're going to feel safe. Now let's talk about emotional boundaries. These are a little murkier because they really vary from person to person. For instance, some people are totally comfortable with teasing, and other people are really sensitive and they don't want any teasing at all because they've been teased in the past. So an emotional boundary violation is much more around being hurt emotionally, like if you're being yelled at, if you're being called names, if you're being mistreated in any way. All of those are boundary violations. Some others are, let's say you set a boundary and say no to your partner about something, and instead of them accepting it, they badger you until you give in. They just don't give up. They keep trying to convince you. That's a clear boundary violation, because if that's your boundary, you should be able to control that. Another one is when someone makes you feel bad about your choices. So for instance, maybe you say to them, you know, I'm not going to go to dinner with your parents tonight because I'm really in a bad space and I need to stay home and take care of myself. And instead, you make them feel bad and even question your reality. Like, I don't know why you would want to do that. My parents are lovely to you, and maybe they haven't been. So that's where the gaslighting comes in. And that's a sign of boundary violation emotionally, because we're making someone doubt their reality, and that's really hurtful. Now, another example of emotional boundaries is invading someone's privacy. This could be not allowing your partner or your child to shut their door for privacy. Everybody needs privacy on occasion, and that's a really important boundary. Another one is invading your partner or your friend's social media accounts, expecting access to emails, texts, journals. That really is a sign of control, because those things typically need to be private. Now, if your partner is wanting that and there's a trust issue, that's something that probably needs to be dealt with in therapy. But if there isn't a major trust issue, like there hasn't been a history of affairs, and they expect all access to all of your social media accounts and email and text, that's a that's a major red flag that I want you to pay attention to, because everybody deserves to have their privacy respected. And if it's in question, that may be another separate issue. So another example is when you actually set a boundary and they disregard it. So you say, you know what, I need to stop this conversation, it's not going well, and they follow you out the door and they make sure you cannot leave that situation. That's going to be an important boundary, because everybody needs to be able to control what they do and when they leave a situation. Because a boundary is more about what you decide to do. It's not about getting somebody else to stop, okay? And with boundary violators, a lot of times what you need to do is remove yourself, because if they don't understand what's happening, well, the first thing you need to do is you need to speak up. You need to be super clear with these folks, because they're not going to get subtle hints. They're not going to get nonverbal cues, because they're used to getting what they want. Now, the next step for you is to go watch my video on when people violate your boundaries, because I share a 3-step process that is super helpful when people are violating your boundaries. Thanks so much for watching.